completing your videographer from KNOM website. Welcome to the College of Complexes. Let us know if you'd like to see some more of these nice videos.
Ding 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 ding. Buzz buzz. Ring ring. Time to start, guys. A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P Q R S T U V. Hey, we're almost silent. W X Y and Z. Welcome to Sesame Street on Saturday night. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for enduring another evening in the warm room, as we've been referring to it here during the month of July. Talked to them about the air conditioning. They have determined that there's a unit on the roof which is out, and the owner's getting some pricing on repairing it or putting in a rebuilt one or putting in a new unit on the roof. And evidently it's the responsibility of the restaurant owner, not the building owner, unless he bought the building too. I don't know that. But anyway, hopefully here over the next week or two we'll be back into cool air without having to listen to the loud fans blow. Last week before last, when we met, we had the air conditioning unit over here working. It was blowing cold air out the front and hot air out the top, which is net equals zero, you know. It wasn't cooling the room down, at least from my non-engineering standpoint. That's the way I saw it. I got the fan turned down that's blowing cool air in from the other room, so Jim. Yeah, we got one of our Jims is missing in action. I spoke to him on the phone today. They're still out of town. I think they've been up in Colorado, but maybe back next week. Talked to Tom today. Today is their last day in Chicago. He's going to the College of Complexes in downtown Chicago this evening, and looking forward to that. And then they're driving down to St. Louis tomorrow, and next day down to Eureka Springs and visit someone who's either an old friend or a relative, I've forgotten which, and see a little bit of the scenery of Eureka, which is always pleasant and refreshing. And then let's see, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I guess they'll be back in sometime Tuesday. So we'll be looking forward to having them back in next week. But welcome out tonight. I'm glad you made it out on a warm July evening. Jim Davis is going to talk to you tonight. And let's see, what did we title the sermon this evening, Jim? The good of all, rich and poor alike. And yeah, Tom's friend up in Chicago even found an appropriate photograph to put on the notice. I thought that was kind of nice. That looked like a right after World War II house with the young couple and out in front and starting the family. But yeah, we have a lot of discussion these days about income and spread and how we can make things better for everybody. Real briefly, let's see, next week, I think our speaker might be here tonight. So he had a couple of subjects he was prepared to talk about when he talked several weeks ago. So he's going to come back and do the other one. And then Tom's got second and third Saturday scheduled up. Our third Saturday is Lloyd Chappelle, who's spoken to us a couple of times. He always has an interesting presentation. He's going to talk about the Federal Reserve. And then there's going to be a professor who will speak second week, and I forgot exactly what his subject is, but it'll be an interesting presentation, I'm sure. And Tom's got I think maybe a county judge is going to come and talk the fourth Saturday. So anyway, it looks like we have a good lineup ahead of us. In the meantime, we're looking forward to a good evening tonight. I hope everybody gets some good food and hears something that stimulates your mind. I think everybody who's here tonight has been here, right? Anybody been here? Anybody here for the first time I didn't spot? Goodness, you don't get any of the drivelly old history of the group.
Oh, come on, tell us.
I'm not Tom. I'm not going to rattle off my memorized presentation. Yes, I've partly gone around and taken up the offer of the $3 contribution to the fund. I'll go finish that up here in just a moment. So if you'd have that ready to go, that'll help the cause. Anybody have any announcements to make tonight? Susie, come on up.
I just wanted to invite people to Dallas County East Democrats. Our next meeting will be this coming Wednesday. Networking starts at 6:30. The actual meeting starts at 7. I'm not sure who our speaker will be, but it's usually a great entertaining time to get together with other people who are progressive, and if that is your leaning, and meet with us. Anyway, our location is at a Mexican restaurant off of Gross Road in Mesquite. If you are interested in joining us at Dallas County East Democrats, please see me after the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, those are good meetings. Tom and I have gone to quite a few of them, and it's always an enjoyable presentation and interesting group of people. Anybody else have an announcement they need to make tonight? Well, if not, well, that's a problem. Yeah, don't tell us to go somewhere if you can't tell us where it's going to be. We'd sort of get lost, wouldn't we?
I slept this morning, didn't hear the radio, so I don't know where.
Okay, all right. Jim, you ready to come up and start the program?
Yes.
Well, bring it on. We're looking forward to having you here again tonight. Thank you so much for coming. Let's welcome Jim Davis to the podium.
Greetings. How many of y'all tired of hearing about George Zimmerman? You tired of hearing about that crap? How about immigration? You tired of hearing about that shit? Voting rights? How long have we been talking about this stuff? I mean, a year, 2 years, 5 years? But yet, there's some serious issues that threaten the security of this nation that aren't even being discussed. And that, you know, the clock's just ticking away. We have a middle class that just, I think everybody knows that it's in a state of decline. But I don't think people realize how much of a state of decline it's in. Because if they did, we would be talking about George Zimmerman or abortion rights or any of that stuff. We'd be talking about the things that need to be done to fix this situation. For example, when I began my career, I started out in a steel mill. And some of you have heard me tell this before, but in '67 I was making $4.85 an hour. We had Blue Cross Blue Shield that covered prescription, eye care, dental care. I mean, it would be good for any top level executive nowadays. It covered everything. Had a retirement plan, a good one. good vacation, good life insurance. We had it all. Well, that $45 an hour is equal now to $35.78 an hour. That's how bad things have gotten. I made fun of my best friend for making $2.70 an hour. I said, why don't you get you a real job, son? You're making tiny bucks. $2.70 an hour is now the same as $19.87 an hour. A lot of people think that's good money. I don't. I still consider it tiny bucks, especially since worker productivity has doubled in that time. Doubled. So what happened? I mean, what brought about this, our middle class, and what caused it to fade away? Well, laws passed by Congress enabled it to rise, and laws passed by Congress have contributed to its decline. It's as simple as that. Now, people, it's not a Democrat or versus Republican. That's not what the issue is. The issue is us, the people, all of us, rich and poor alike, versus special interest. Now, a lot of the special interest people are made up of wealthy families, but they're lobbying Congress for their particular special interest, and it's hurting the nation as a result. There are 4 laws that were passed that brought about a middle class. And these kind of laws are what I refer to as good legislation. And by that I mean laws, they favor the individual, but they work for the good of everybody, rich and poor alike. And ironically, these same laws are the ones that special interests lobby against. I'll give you an example of a law that favored the individual. Now, a law that favors the good ones don't require a huge bureaucracy or billions and billions of dollars year after year to fund them. The good ones set dynamics that spur growth and opportunities. I'll give you an example of a good law that favored the individual. It's called the Glass-Steagall Act. I think most of you are familiar with that. It was passed 4 days after FDR took office. The Glass-Steagall Act included FDIC insurance. But before he took office, 40% of the banks were bankrupt. Everybody lost everything, wiped out. Another 40% were closed by state governors to prevent runs. Those people had no access to their checking account, and that contributed greatly to the Great Depression. Well, 4 days after he was sworn in, Congress passed the Glass-Steagall Act. FDIC restored confidence. The banks were reopened. Millions of people had access to their funds. And what followed was the most rapid increase in industrial production in history, 57% in 4 months. Now, the Glass-Steagall Act favored the individual because it protected his deposits. Now, that also protected the bankers and the business community because it protected deposits. So special interests come in years later, and the Democratic Clinton administration amends the Glass-Steagall Act, and you know what happened. Now they're talking about basically putting it back the way it was and then trying to bust up the big banks, which not a bad idea either. So I don't think there's anybody in this room that would argue the fact that the Glass-Steagall Act worked for the good of all. Anybody disagree? By the way, have a question, raise your hand during the meeting, okay? If I don't see you, yell or something. Yes.
Did the Glass-Steagall Board just?
Well, yeah, it did. It regulated the activities of banking to accepting deposits and lending money. Accepting deposits and lending money. That's all they could do. Of course, when they amended it, it opened, basically what it did, it legalized the activities that got us into the Great Depression in the first place, risky activities. Now that was because of special interest lobbying in Congress. The congressmen, they know that if they want to get reelected, they're going to have millions of dollars to do so in most cases. And who's got the money? The lobbyist. They can either go along and get reelected, or they can do the right thing and get beat in the primary. That's what it amounts to. What would you do? Don't even tell me you do the right thing, because I know better. Nobody would. They're going to try and keep their job and do what they can. Okay, here's another law that favored the individual and worked for the good of all. The National Housing Act. It's the Department of Housing and Urban Development is the aftermath of that Housing Act. Now that's a huge bureaucracy, but the National Housing Act it created the FHA 30-year loan. Before that, home loans were generally 3 to 5 years long. You had to put 25–30% down, and they used second and third mortgages to finance the difference. And usually what would happen is some shady second lender would come in and make a second lien, and then when the first lien came due, if the buyer couldn't refinance it, well, too bad, he lost everything. So the second lien holder got a sheriff's deed, put the property back on the market, laughed all the way to the bank and sold it time and time and time again. Well, because of the short-term loans, when it came time to refinance, any of the first, second, or third lien even, oftentimes they couldn't do it. About 30%, a little over 30% of people owned their own homes up to that point. The FHA 30-year loan changed everything. It made the 30-year loan what I'm going to call the public option home loan. Because of the 30-year loan, people could qualify. They only needed a small down payment, and that enabled all of the new housing, all the shopping centers, all the construction that's going on to build America's residential neighborhoods up until the crash of '08. Yes, sir.
When you say they owned their own homes, were they paid off or they?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean they had title to them. They were making payments in most cases. Now the reason the 30-year loan was not standard before was no one wanted to commit funds for that long of a period of time. But because the buyer paid a premium and to insure the loan, insurance companies were quick to recognize, hey, this is a safe bet. We can buy these mortgages and draw our interest and it'd be a safe investment. So they started buying these things up, and that meant more money out there for lenders to lend. And what we have is the nice housing we have today. Well, nations that don't have a similar program, 3 to 5 year loans are still the norm. It'd be that way here again. If something ever happened to the FHA home loan program, believe me, it would. It'd be gone. And with it, your equity. Everybody in this room probably owns their own home. Well, if that went away, you'd lose 2/3 of your equity. That's what would happen. Now, everybody knows how many people have made their fortunes in real estate. It's no secret. The FHA loan program did not require a huge bureaucracy or billions and billions of dollars year after year to maintain it. All it did was set the dynamics in place, and private business took over. That's the way I think the government, the role they should play. Of course, now, another law they passed was the National Labor Relations Act. It set in motion. What it did, it just said, basically, if the majority of employees want a union, the law mandated that the employer had to recognize it. Simple as that. Now, I know there's a lot of people in this room that don't like unions, but here's the deal. Without them, the middle class is going to fade away. And it's because of competitive pressure. All it takes is for one company to say, listen, we're going to cut expenses, so, well, can't do the rent, no, they won't talk to us. We've already beat the electric company up. Our suppliers, we're beating the hell out of them. There's not another dime there, but God, you know what? That cost of living raise that I was going to give out next year, I'm just not going to give it out. And cut my expenses that way. That's what's been going on for the past 30 years. They're not giving out raises. It's because of a lack of unions. That's the reason. Now, restore unions, restore them, put money back in the pockets of its citizens, and if the middle class has money, they'll spend it. And who's going to benefit? The small business people that buy their supplies from the big mega corporations. Right? I've never ever understood the supply side thing. Now think about this. A supply sider thinks that productivity and the willingness to produce goods is more important than demand. Say what? The willingness to produce more goods and services is more important than demand is of secondary consequence? I don't think so. We've got plenty of supply out there, have had it for years. Corporations are sitting on tons of money. They're not hiring. Why would they? There's no demand. I don't blame them. It's our stupid laws that need to be fixed to where the middle class gets on the other side of the tipping point to just get this economy going again. But now, you restore unions and all those jobs. They went overseas because, they didn't. They went overseas because of special interest lobbying. That's why they went overseas, to change our trade treaties. You can't blame the people that did the lobbying. They saw an opportunity to, hey, listen, we can make stuff over there, sell over here, make a lot of money. I don't blame them one bit for doing that. That's the way it is. That's a democratic form of government. We've been asleep. we've been, I mean, for years, people just didn't care. I mean, looked the other way until I think we passed a tipping point. Well, it was in '08 when the bubble burst, and we still haven't recovered. Now, we're in sort of a recovery right now, but it's not going to last long. I'll guarantee you it's going to turn the other way before the next election, probably. What's that mean? That means revenge votes. Scares the daylights out of me. Anyway, how many of you, everybody in here know what a business roundtable is? Well, it's a group of businessmen, mostly from competitive industries that share common goals. The first one was formed in 1973. It consists of 40 of the top 50 CEOs in the country, along with several think tank advisors, by the way. And here's some of the information that they supplied. In 1972, union money made up half of all PAC money. Half. They assured the CEOs that a lot more PAC money was coming, and it would overwhelm the unions, and they could amend foreign trade policies and use foreign labor as a tool to bust the unions, and that's what they did. In '74, that's when you start seeing all these Jap imports come in masses. Foreign steel, foreign imports were beginning to take big shares out of the domestic economy. And if you think back, you'll hear quite a bit. You heard nearly every Sunday that there was something on the Sunday morning news shows about foreign trade. They would announce the trade deficits every month. It was always a hot topic of discussion. Don't hear about it now, do you? You don't hear the fact that we're losing $1.5 million every minute to a foreign trade deficit, do you? You don't hear that. You don't hear the fact that we've lost 35% of our industrial base, but we have. Manufacturing has gone from 39% of GDP to 11%. But now that's not the only threat. Outsourcing jobs on top of outsourcing industries. About 800,000 high-tech jobs have been outsourced to other countries. And now we're in a situation where people just don't want to go to school and study for these careers because they know their job is going to be outsourced. We have a shortage of engineers and high-tech people now. Our good friends across the ocean, they're graduating 10 times as many. They're doing our work, developing our so-called intellectual properties, which, by the way, is a big export. It's all being done overseas. Whoopee, that really helps us, doesn't it? Okay, but when relations sour, who will those engineers be working for? I didn't say if, I said when. When relations go bad, who will those engineers be working for? Not the United States. Whose armed forces is going to benefit? Now, folks, if you don't think this is a serious issue, you better think again. We've got about 5 years to turn this thing around, or this nation has had it. You don't hear the fact, how many of you heard on the news that we are no longer the leading manufacturing nation on earth? We're not. You don't hear it on the news. How many of you have ever heard of the TPP, the Texas Trans-Pacific Partnership? Few of you people have. Okay. Well, it's a trade organization the U.S. has been negotiating with since 2009 to join. Activists call it NAFTA on steroids. All it is just a way to assure a continued source of low-cost labor as labor costs rise in developing countries. That's all it is. And our good friend, President Obama, likes bad trade deals, I guess, because he signed a few of them, which, by the way, we've lost about 23,000 jobs because of the deal in Korea. Not many compared to the 8 million we've already lost, but during his State of the Union address, he talked about a couple more deals in Europe and so on. Now, a law that would favor the individual and work for the good of all, rich and poor alike, would amend foreign trading policies to where those jobs and industries would be brought back here. That would favor rich and poor alike. It would enable a lot of people who don't have the education for whatever reason to find employment. It would increase business opportunities all around the country because of people having more money to spend. It would be a tool to end poverty in this country, reduce taxes, get the government out of the welfare business, and that would work for the good of all, rich and poor alike. Now, you know how I know that we're in trouble? It used to be the Federal Reserve, when we had a little slump, they would lower interest rates a little bit. A few months later, the economy would come back. We've had low interest rates now for years. Years. Lower than ever. Well, the economy is struggling a little bit, but it's about to peter out. Watch and see. It's going to peter out. Bottom line, I think, to this whole discussion is putting public pressure on Congress to modify our foreign trade policies and campaign financing. Until campaign financing is a reality, whoever has the money is going to get their way, and it's going to be a special interest group, and usually it's going to be bad for the good of all. It might help a few hundred powerful businesses or corporations, but it's not going to be good for the public. And it could be cause a downfall of this nation, because most of the research and development is done by private business. We all know that. And if all that business is going overseas, it's going to be done overseas. And more trade treaties, unless there's conditions linking them to, responsible EPA standards and where they'd have the right to, well, basically a zero deficit for the United States is what it's going to take. We might even give a little bit of that up to use foreign trade as a mechanism to promote democracy, which we could very easily. That's another topic. But until we get campaign finance reform and trade reform policies that favor the individual, we're throwing the country away. And the special interests, they're the ones that have the most to lose, but they're looking out for their own little group of, you know, it's benefiting them because they can make, like foreign trade, for example, that business model is just all built on low-cost foreign labor and a lack of regulations for that model to work. Now, that is not good legislation that favors the individual. It does not work for the good of all. It's a threat to our country. And my purpose tonight was to try to explain the difference. I mean, we pass hundreds of laws a year, I guess. I don't know how many. But most of them are geared towards some special interest group. And they may not hurt the middle class, but they do nothing for it. Passing just a few and just redoing some of the damage to a few of them is all it's going to take to keep this country in the #1, you know, our leadership position from now on. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to see another country assume that position. I mean, we've made some bad mistakes, but I'll trust our leadership over anybody else's leadership any day. Take your pick. USA or made in China. Anyway, any questions or comments?
Do you really trust our leadership given what's happening?
No. I mean, no, because they want to get reelected.
I mean, don't you agree? We don't even have a semblance of democracy, right?
Well, not really, because I mean, big business runs the government.
Well, why? Is that democracy?
We vote for them, okay? We vote. Well, I mean, some people vote for them. It's because of a misinformed public. The news media is controlled now by big business, and they don't tell us what they don't want us to hear. They don't want you hearing trade deficits that amount to 10 times what they were in the 1980s. Because if people gripe then, they'd really be griping now. Out of sight, out of mind. Right? Questions? Any other questions? Well, I must have done a good job.
On the National Labor Relations Act, I guess you're aware of the obstructionism in Congress to keep the block the president's nominees and staff the NLRB.
Oh yeah. Special interest behind that. They don't want. Look, special interest decided in the early 70s to bust the unions, and they've just about done it. The foreign trade deal worked out pretty good, more profitable, so later on they came in, hey, well, let's do NAFTA, let's join the World Trade Center. And again, it was Bill Clinton that passed those two things also, the Democrats. So it's not a Republican versus Democrat, it's us versus special interest. It's special interest versus special interest, if you ask me. Yes.
Yeah. Do you think that Democratic Party will ever become a party of the ordinary working man, or is it
Not
so,
until-
so beholden to the upper echelons that it's hopeless?
Do you want to win your re-election next time? Then who are you going to,
Who are you going to vote for, right?
no, I mean, what are you going to do?
Well, you know,
Are you going to try and win the favor of the lobbyist?
years ago, Ralph Nader ran, and I certainly would have hoped he'd be president.
They did not want him to run, did they?
Well, of course not.
Of course not. I mean,
He might have done some good.
but he was unable to raise the money. You know, in the 70s, people were shocked because it cost $100,000 to run a Senate campaign. One of them cost $24 million last time. One of them. Now, big business has the money. One of the things that people don't know about the labor movement is during that period of time when wages kept up with the economy, and it's a proven fact they did. I've got graphs here to show it. I'll fumble through them in a minute. When that happened, they had half the PAC money. The other half was from special interest. I mean, labor is a special interest, right? It's a special interest. But so is the banking industry. So is the American Iron and Steel Institute. Special, it's special interest. So is, the Association for Retailers that want all this imported cheap stuff in. Special interest. Until the money's out of politics, no, we haven't got a chance. Not a chance. Yes?
Given your discussion about Glass-Steagall and how you feel that that's one of the solutions would be restoring Glass-Steagall, I wonder if you would comment on the intention of possibly Larry Summers version 2 as chair of the Fed.
I don't know what that is.
Larry Summers?
Version 2?
He was part of the Clinton administration during the time that Glass-Steagall was torn apart.
Okay.
And there's, I guess,
okay.
the rumor mill right now that he might be...
He's the pick.
No, he's being considered as
Right.
the pick for chair of the Fed.
Well, I don't know. I think probably, here's the bottom line. Glass-Steagall was amended because of special interest lobbying and the effect of campaign financing. That's why it was passed. Now, Summers, he might have played a part in drafting the amendment. I don't know. He did okay.
Actually, Larry Summers was one of the prime movers in removing the Glass-Steagall Act. He was also one of the prime movers in cutting the Obama stimulus in half. Christina Roma, who was also led the Council of Economic Advisors, recommended the stimulus should be 1.6 trillion. It was Summers that said, oh, no, it should be cut in half. Basically, as you just said, normally you cut interest rates and that does the trick. Well, if that doesn't do the trick, you have to spend. So I think had it really been 1.6, we would have seen a much faster recovery. I haven't really seen it.
Well, of course it would. Like in the 80s, we had a recession that, by the way, was caused by the Federal Reserve high interest rate policy, and the recession ended as they eased up on the high interest rates because inflation was under control. But we had Reagan's $1 trillion military budget, which was a public works program, really. But that $1 trillion converted to $1985 would be $2.13 trillion today. Now that was a huge stimulus program. Obama's was half that. If it would have been doubled, it'd have done some good. But until we get the money out of politics, it doesn't matter who's running the Federal Reserve. But if Glass-Steagall limits banking activities to accepting deposits and making loans, that's it. Doesn't matter. That's the key. Good legislation that favors the individual and works for the good of all. Yes?
In that Congress passes the laws and they're the ones who are across the board bought off, how do you expect to ever get this money out of Congress as you're talking about?
That's why I'm here tonight. That's why I'm here tonight.
Is there a solution to that other than revolution?
No. You can either do it with a gun or you can do it with a ballot. Take your pick. The ballot's the easy way out. The outcome is much more certain.
Well, I think maybe people here should do some reading about electronic vote counting machines and question whether they think they get a free vote in this country anymore.
That might be, but hear me out. That's a topic for another day. We need to get the money out of politics.
We can't do that if the vote doesn't count.
I've worked the county elections for Dallas County, and they have electronic voting machines, and I'm convinced that they can't be compromised. Put it that way. They can't be compromised. I don't believe.
I would say that the operative word in what you just said was the word believe.
I believe that.
I had a friend years ago who was 27 years in the CIA, and he told me one evening over dinner, said, Albert, you know there are 3 levels of government. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, there are all those politicians that we think we elect, but we really don't. It's just all made to look like we do. And then there's an intelligence community, and then the super rich. And the intelligence community is the muscle in government. A lot of what they do is illegal. 27 years in the CIA, this guy, mostly in Saudi Arabia and Iran. And then the elite, and they have to work together, those 2 upper levels.
Well,
we don't have freedom of vote in this country anymore. It's an illusion.
Well, I think most of the votes count. I'll leave it at that. I believe most of them count. Otherwise, we would have Obama wouldn't be president, put it that way.
That puppet on strings wouldn't be president getting millions of dollars of work for himself?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Trying to make a comment over here when I get a chance here. Hi.
Who's got the microphone?
I have the microphone here. I have the microphone here. Hi. Jim? Right over here.
Well,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. In 2000, I got the opportunity to videotape the National Vote Fraud Convention that was held in Cincinnati in August of that year. And we had people reporting on vote fraud from all over the country with every system in existence at that time, ES&S, Diebold, and examples and documentaries on how they are all rigged, and how even when it's not a matter of rigging them in the precinct, how the numbers can be changed downtown, basically. And I was laughing my head off on my way back, because the very thing that they talked about in the convention happened on the radio as I'm listening to the local radio going back through Oklahoma. They reported that an important election for some local thing was going on. All of a sudden, the computers went down.
Okay, let's stop right here. And we're talking about...
I'm not finished.
Well, but we're off topic.
Oh,
okay.
This is just one point.
Okay.
So the computers went down, and then all of a sudden they came back up, and the incumbent was ahead. He had been way behind before, and I am just laughing because that's precisely what they described, and it happens every day. It happens in local elections and all the way up. So we have a real challenge there, and that's a small part of what you say, and I don't want to take anything more away from what you're saying there. So.
Well, I mean, that's a topic for another evening, I guess, for another speaker. But I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I haven't seen that much evidence that there is fraud. Maybe I'm ignorant. I don't know. But let's try to stay a little closer to what we're talking about here.
I have a question.
Yes.
So my question would be, it seems to me that part of your talk revolves around the fact that if we don't do something to restore...
We've had it. We've had it.
If we don't do something to restore the middle class, if we don't have some kind of manufacturing base, if we don't increase our science and engineering degrees, et cetera, then we're doomed. Basically,
we are.
What I'm hearing is doom.
Yeah, we are.
I'm not hearing the outliers of, I guess...
The what now?
Outliers.
What's that?
The people who far excel above and beyond when you're teaching to the normal.
Those are the people that have benefited because of special interest legislation. But
I guess what I would like to hear is from you, sir, is some solution-oriented that maybe is more in line with what we have available to us now, or some encouragement rather than we're just screwed and we can't go back.
Well, I mean, do you think that having all of our high-tech work done overseas is not a threat to national security by being done by people in other countries? Is that not a threat to our security?
Well, I would just say that I don't think that all of our work is
no, it's
done
not.
Overseas. I would
but
say
is it a threat to our national security?
That, you know, we do have Chinese spying, supposedly reported in the news, if you can trust this, Chinese spying on businesses and stealing intellectual property there.
I know.
You know.
But I mean, when you have,
but
when you're outsourcing good jobs to foreign countries to undermine the U.S. labor force and capitalize on profits, that's what they're doing, that's a threat to our national security, especially when it discourages others from entering certain studying high-tech fields in college. That's a threat to our national security. And if I'm making it sound gloom and doom, you be the judge. You know, I think we better turn it around pretty soon, or else, is what I think. That's what I think. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I know one thing: until there's public demand, it's not going to happen.
So how do you create that demand?
That's what I'm trying to do right now.
Encourage all of us to speak out. What is
I mean,
when you say demand?
I mean, I see you guys on Facebook every day. Well, the Zimmerman, you know, keep your politics out of my vagina. Who cares about that? I mean, I don't want to hear that stuff anymore. Let's talk about the real threats. That's what I'm here. That's why I'm here tonight. Let's get down to business and turn this country around while we still can.
Perhaps I'll save my remarks for the rebuttal then. But, you know,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
The question is, if one does not have sovereignty over one's own body or the clear ability to vote or the clear ability to run away from someone who is chasing after you with a gun and not fear being shot, that's, I think, why you have the public outcry right now.
But, yeah,
people who
of course.
are holding peaceful vigils in remembrance of Trayvon Martin because he was running away from someone who was chasing him, who was told not to.
I understand that.
Him.
I understand that, but
So, you know,
I mean, don't you? I
the
mean,
person with the gun who shoots the other person so that they can no longer speak for themselves wins in this case.
I think it all boils
another
down
form
to
of
a
politics.
bad law. Stand your ground's a bad law. It invites that type of incident. It invites it.
But if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, first you have to care for your physical safety. Then you aspire to other higher needs, like trade and, commerce and that sort of thing. If you have no physical safety, if people don't have sovereignty over their own bodies, then in my estimation, that is a priority. But that's a remark rather than a question. So does anybody else have a question that they'd like to ask?
What do you think? Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
You get to do you get one law passed. What's it going to be? Tell me. It's your pick. You're king for a day.
Oh, you mean in the current Congress?
Yeah, I mean...
A federal law or a state law?
You pass any law you want to. What's it going to be?
I honestly haven't thought about that from a perspective of what is the most worthy law, but I would say that one's physical safety takes precedence over one's economic commerce.
But bad times can threaten a lot of people's safety. And with the ability to be able to purchase an assault weapon, something could go wrong.
Or if you attend any one of the Republican fundraisers, you could just, win the raffle or the silent auction for the AK-47 if you like.
Well, I don't want one myself, but anyway, it's special interest versus we the people. That's what the bottom line is. That's the diagnosis. And the special interests run the government. They get the laws passed that they want, usually, or they have some influence on what does get passed.
So when you talk in terms of special interests,
the banking lobby.
You're specifically targeting your remarks towards the banking lobby.
No.
Or corporate
special interest. Well, I mean, usually special interest or business interest.
Okay. Because, there are a lot of other special interests like, teachers banding together or ARP, retired persons banding together or, and the ARP is a pretty powerful special interest lobby. Not that the current Congress will listen to ARP, but,
I didn't say all special interests were bad.
Okay.
But it's us against special interest. And they're passing laws that brought about the demise of the middle class. I mean, we know where we've been. We know how the middle class has declined. My example earlier about the 3578, no one makes that kind of money nowadays, even though productivity has doubled. Why? Where's the money? Well, there's enough wealth in this country, based on 310 million, I'm not advocating dividing up equally, but if it was, it'd be $213,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. And we got a broke middle class. Something's wrong with that picture, ma'am. Something wrong there.
Right here.
Yes.
You spoke about special interests, or should we say bad special interests. What is more valuable in terms of eliminating that?
Eliminating debt?
You spoke about special interests in government, correct? And how that has a negative influence on the democratic process.
Well, look at the situation we're in.
All right, so here's my question.
Okay.
What is more valuable to get rid of that influence? Voting through the ballot box or voting through a credit card? In other words, do you utilize a vote.
Oh, I don't even know. I don't even want to go there. I don't want to talk.
I think we should anyway, because if you're saying we're supposed to get rid of those things and you're not offering any solution,
I mean, I don't.
There's a question. Do you use your credit card? Do you find out who those special interests are and try not to support those companies by not buying their products?
No, don't worry.
Or do you use the democratic process, the pure democratic process?
The pure, look, boycotts don't work. Walmart is still a very prosperous company. Boycotts don't work.
So you feel it's rather the democratic process that is the only solution?
Get the money out of politics is the only solution.
And how do we do that?
Public demand.
Well, you've used that
Call your
expression 3 times. I don't even know what that even means.
Call your congressman and raise hell. Write letters. Get your friends to do it. Congress will react because of or lack of public demand. They always have, they always will. If we don't make demands, you can guarantee that the people who lobby Congress will keep on making demands, and they're going to win. They've been winning. Now, special interest, there's the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, there's just all kinds of industries, all kinds of groups, you know, and they're having a lot more influence than what the people have. And the people are not being properly represented in Congress. If they were, we wouldn't have a declining middle class. We wouldn't have lost 35% of our industrial base. We wouldn't have had a Wall Street bailout. But special interests got us into this mess, and it's up to us to get us out of this mess. Because the rich aren't going to do it for us. I mean, and in the long run, they got the most to lose, but the rich, I mean, they might be in the import business. They're going to fight. They're going to fight to maintain that. Just like the National Association of Realtors, an organization I used to belong to, they fought like hell against having sales tax added on home purchases. You know. Now I think that helped sometimes special interest lobbying is good for the people. It just depends. If it ends up undermining the national workforce, just so a few people can make bigger profits, not a good deal. But that's what's been going on. I hope you understand. I mean, it's up to us. You can boycott. Don't buy anything unless it's made in America. Where are you going to buy it at? They don't work. They don't work. Until people make demands on Congress about the real issues, we are a nation in decline. And because of the technology threat, it's a real national security threat. I mean, how could it not be? How could it not be? Yes. Anybody else?
Does anybody else want the talking stick?
Huh? Oh. Anybody want to come up and give their little rebuttal?
This is your last chance to ask a question. It looks like we've expired that. Let's move on to step 3. And for any of you who want to make some comments, either in terms of agreement, expansion on, or disagreement with Jim's presentation, go up to the podium and do it there at the mics. Let Jim sit down and listen to your comments, and then we'll shut it down when we're finished with stage 3 and give Jim an opportunity to get back up and tell us good night and respond to any of our comments that he wants to. So who would like to come up and
Aha, I do believe I see the hand. Come on up. Off to the podium.
That working?
Okay, Jim, that was, I tend to agree with most of your points, but I think the real danger is not money and politics per se. It's the fact that the world now is run by cartels. You have these groups like the Bilderberg Group and the World Economic Forum, and they meet and they decide what's going to happen. And really, what they've done, and as I've said many times, they run the multinational corporations, and of the 100 richest entities in the world, including countries, over 50 are corporations. Now, if you look at all sectors, there's just about 2 or 3 huge corporations in all the sectors. For example, mining, there are two large, there's BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto. They're the 2 huge mining companies in the world. And like under diamonds, there's just De Beers and so on and so forth. They run the whole show. They have enough money. They control the World Trade Organization. The game is, there is no entity that really cares about one country. These people don't care about one country. They operate around the world, globally. They say, okay, where's the cheapest labor force? Okay, we'll move production there. Where's the market we can sell? Okay, we'll fleece those guys there. They don't give a damn about one particular country. Okay, I mean, that to me that's what people don't understand. They think they can vote and change that in Washington, in London, in Europe. I mean, the salient thing that Angela Merkel said in Europe recently was, okay, Europeans, you've got to lower your living standards to compete. What? I mean, talk about another Margaret lunatic Thatcher. I mean, she takes the biscuits. I mean, what, you know, how on earth are the guys sitting around, how on earth are you going to compete with Chinese earning, you know, 50 cents an hour? It cannot be done. But that is what the cartels want. They don't give a damn about America. They don't give a damn about England or any other country. They think they can run the show. I mean, basically, as I've said before, we've moved back from capitalism back to mercantilism and cartels. When they got the permits from the king, these days they give themselves the permits. And every day of the week you can see it. I mean, since I've been here, look, the decline of the mom and pop stores, all you see is bigger and bigger entities. And, you know, and that's what's happened now. The one thing, you know, the first thing I would do, you ask, well, Susie, what would you do? One is I would bring back to stop this trade imbalance. You have to bring back a mechanism that would do that, which is what Keynes proposed with the Bancor international currency that would eliminate trade deficits. So Walmarts couldn't get advantage, but yeah, it would bring the jobs back. Now the other thing, I mean, what you've seen now is a decline in the blue-collar force over here, but you're going to see a decline in the white-collar force, because, well, it's happening. It's going to continue even worse. Now, it's when that happens, it's rather like I came when the Vietnam War was going strong. It was the big turning point was when the middle-class kids were being shipped off, and they said no. I mean, it really, nowadays, it's just the poor kids get shipped off and die in ridiculous wars in Afghanistan. That doesn't matter, okay? But once the white middle-class kids start losing their jobs en masse and will never get a decent job, even though they've paid, what, $100,000 for education, which they can never pay back because the buying power won't be there. I mean, basically, so what's happened is America is headed towards being a banana republic, okay, which you see in South America. That's where it's headed. Now, it's only when the middle class, and the educated middle class wake up and say, hey, it's going to hurt our kids, and start waking up and doing something. Now, the Republicans, I mean, basically speaking, we needed another FDR. We got Obama. I mean, you know, he's a nice guy, but he just doesn't have the stamina and the guts to do what FDR did, which was challenge the banks and change things.
All right, our perspective from London, Xerox. Who would like to be next? Come on up to the podium. All right. We haven't heard your voice for a couple of sessions. Bring it on up.
Okay, supply and demand, that's what we've heard a lot about. I think we kind of get the government.
Raise your mics just a bit.
We get the government that we deserve. I mean, if there are 10% of people that actually show up to the ballot and vote, they're not paying attention. Okay. Now, a word about the laws exist because frankly, the special interests that we're talking about don't have to work very hard to run roughshod over the interests that people really have and haven't really organized to express. Okay? They haven't, at least we would have to make them work hard. I mean, you can do that by voting, of course, but it doesn't stop there. I mean, you've got to be engaged. You've got to organize. You've got to assemble. You have the right to assemble. People are convinced increasingly that they don't. You have no unions. You have very few trade organizations, at least compared to what you used to have. You know, people are afraid to assemble. And this is America. That should not happen. I mean, there are so many workplaces where you're discouraged or threatened by that. This is America. That should not happen. Besides that, you can form special interests in other areas. I mean, if you want, whatever area you want to do. I mean, you can form a special interest. You can lobby Congress people, and they'll vote accordingly. If you're silent, they're going to listen to the voices that are there. And those are the people that are lobbying and writing legislation vigorously. We're making it easy for them. Second of all, there has to be political will. I think Obama could be the next FDR, but what chance does he have? I mean, good. Have you seen Congress? I mean, the president is not a dictator here. You know, as I pay attention now, he's just one part of the government. There's a House, there's a Senate. You're represented not just by Barack Obama or whoever the president happens to be. You've got a state legislator, you've got a state senator, you've got a U.S. rep, you've got a U.S. senator. You have judges in your district. Each of them have a certain role. Do you know who they are? Do you know their names? And do you know what they're doing in your name? Most people don't. Not even 10% of people do. Wake up. That's the first thing. Okay. Next. There has been this week, Elizabeth Warren, John McCain, Maria Cantwell, Angus King, a Republican, 2 Democrats, and an independent have reintroduced Glass-Steagall. There's political will there. There is. I mean, do you, well, it probably won't. It probably won't. In fact, I bet money that it won't. But at least it's there. At least there is political will in Massachusetts behind Elizabeth Warren to get this on the table. That hasn't happened in the past. It's there now. She's fighting powerful special interests and she's putting it on the table. It's there. Okay, the other thing I take in, there are 3 points. This is the second one. The other thing I take interest with is both technology, science and technology, and education. Both play a role, okay, in terms of intellectual property. I happen to work in a law firm downtown that deals with intellectual property, patents in particular. You said private business. does most of the research and development. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But I see the patent applications come across my desk every day. Now, the private businesses that I happen to see are not particularly relevant a lot of the times. Particularly relevant. I mean, I have one for a dog toilet, for Christ's sake. I kid you not. There are a lot of telecom patents that pass through the desk that are probably already patented. But the universities, the college and universities, their applications that come through are kind of interesting. So what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with more or significant? That's a question. Okay. The other thing is the education of the workforce. Perhaps a lot of the reason the labor is going overseas, not all, well, obviously a lot of it is cheap, but they're trained better. People here don't have the rigor to have science and technology degrees as compared to people overseas. That is a problem. That is an issue that needs to be addressed here, and it isn't. There is not interest, there is not discipline, and there isn't training for people getting out of America's college and universities that can produce and can actually participate constructively in the labor market that way. The other thing was what you started with. The Zimmerman, the abortion, and the immigration. I'm not tired of hearing those things. Those are important issues, and those are important issues for a lot of people. When you make the right to murder a jump ball, when you allow people to live in the shadows for fear of being deported, or at least to allow their employers to get away with hiring them in slave labor conditions, and when you also make a law that already is constitutional, it is the law of the land that Roe versus Wade makes in viability the point of where I guess a person starts. You have state legislatures all over the place that are rolling those things back, and in the process, severely compromising women's health. That is beyond, you cannot question that. People are waking up. They're seeing how those issues play a part in directly in their lives. They also, when they're unemployed, they start paying attention to the trade deficit. I know it's boring. Maybe most people still turn off the TV, but I think more of them might pay attention. They'll see, you know what, maybe I need to pay attention to this. You're starting to see that. It's nowhere near where it needs to be. I agree with that. But it's starting to be there. But those are issues that cause people to wake up and to see perhaps that there is an interconnection, that there is a role. They need to participate. They need to figure out how they can work. This is a government of the people. When the people are asleep, they forfeit that. They abdicate their responsibility to special interests, whatever that is. So you can't complain about that if you're not willing to participate.
All right. Thank you very much. Well thought out. Next. Well, we get spousal participation tonight. Double treat.
Hi, everyone. So I was just, of course, I was thinking similar to what John was saying, but one of the things I think is kind of interesting about the whole paying attention is that we need to use whatever rights we have as our, whatever it is. And I think our numbers are our biggest power. The sheer numbers of us. There are millions of us, okay? And there's maybe a couple thousand lobbyists, maybe, okay? There's millions of us. There's only a couple thousand of them. So our numbers are our power. So how do we get our numbers going? How do we get our numbers together? And that's one, paying attention. Two, actually getting involved. Three, kind of using networks. Whenever I see people get fired up about something, I'm like, yeah. I mean, even if it's something I don't agree with, it's getting people fired up, getting people together, getting people networking, getting people talking to each other, getting people communicating, and they all form one group, big group, because one voice is powerful, but a million voices are more powerful. So the thing is, we got to get ourselves together. And I think also our money is very powerful. I mean, the whole credit card thing that he was saying earlier is a big deal. If the whole state of Texas, we all got together on Facebook or whatever, and the whole state of Texas decided that we would not go into a Walmart. You don't think Walmart would be upset by that if none of us went into Walmart for a week? They'd be upset. So that's the key. We need to use every single tool to our advantage, whether it's our voice, our vote, protesting, our money. It's whatever we have, we need to use it as our advantage. And the key is we got to do it in large numbers, because that's our power, is numbers. So like I said, we got to figure out a way to do that. And I keep bringing this up all the time in every meeting that I'm in. Well, how do we figure out how to network? How do we get everybody together? How do we get everybody communicating? Because the thing is that only 10% of Texas people are voting, and really only like 2% of them are actually getting involved. That's pretty sad. So that's part of our problem, is we've got to get more people involved. We got to get the networks going. And to be honest with you, I'm trying to come up with ideas on how to develop that. Social media is a big deal. There are other ways to do it. And I think one of the things we need to do is to sit down and forget this left-right paradigm. Forget this, oh, I'm against you and you're against me, and this whole everything is either good or bad, or, I mean, everything, we all are affected by all of this stuff. And we need to get together as best we can and kind of go, okay, you know what, really? You know, Walmart's too powerful. We need to stop spending the money. Like John and I have not given Walmart any money. Now, just the two of us not giving them any money probably is not doing anything. But if millions of people didn't give them money, it would do something. So that's one of the things we need to do about that. You know, we don't shop at Chick-fil-A either. We don't do, I mean, there's ways that we can do this. So use our voices, use your money, use your connections, use everything to get us together, and use our biggest power, which is our numbers. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We have another one coming up already. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to say that the problem that has been identified by the speaker is real. It's here. I think we need to think more optimistic about solutions. There are solutions. There have been times in history before when we had problems, but people, for some reason, they woke away, they awakened from their sleep, and they changed things. And that's what we got to do now. And the lady that preceded me indicated we got to get beyond peripheral issues. That we got to stop criticizing people that may think differently from us. We all got to work together and we deal with the issues in a way, because what we need in America is a better equilibrium, a better balance. We don't need to be to the far right or to the far left. I don't think it helps anything. But I want to deal about the history of Peter Drucker. Was a great consultant, I thought, years ago, talking to corporations, and I almost became a disciple of his until I read the last book I read. He was telling corporations to do just what they're doing now. He was telling corporations to do it because he was very, very wealthy, and the corporation made him that way because he was consulting. And at the beginning, I thought he was giving good advice because I used a lot of it in my work, and it just, you know, you're talking about the round table, all that began to move during that time because they all was reading Peter Drucker. So corporations got greedy, and like as indicated, multinationals owe no allegiance to no country. They are concerned about their own bottom line. They don't care. They don't look at what they're doing. Eventually, as someone has indicated, will affect them. We're all in this boat together, and we got to get beyond peripheral issues, focus on the real issues. But immigration is a real issue to a large segment of the population, and we can't dismiss that. Denying women right to access to health service is a real issue. We cannot belittle that. To talk about denying people the right to vote, that's the core of what we say we believe. We can't do that. We should be encouraging people to vote, not discouraging them for a political reason. We let a system get into place where in many of the states they have redrawn the districts, just like they have in Texas, that the Republicans can win most of the seats and the Democrats can't. They pack minorities into districts and either scatter them so they have no punch. And so when people feel that my vote's not going to count, they don't vote. My hope is in education. Someone else pointed out, not so much, I mean, we need more engineers, we need more technical people, but we need someone to understand history. If we understood history, we wouldn't make many of the mistakes we're making right now. We need someone to understand economics. We need someone to understand political science. We need education. If we educated people, then they would, to make decisions, to think, and not just go along with what they hear. That's what we got to do. That's where I see hope, because if Mr. Romney had offered anything in 2012, he would have won. He didn't offer nothing. And they said African Americans voted at the highest ratio of any group. Well, many whites didn't vote. They couldn't vote for Obama, and they couldn't vote in good conscience for Mr. Romney. So they didn't vote. So that's why our numbers, ratio-wise, went up, because we voted because we believe in what we were doing. And a large number of other people do, because he couldn't have won with just a black vote. A large number of white voted for him in both elections. And that's something else that gives me hope. People are getting beyond peripheral issues, and they're voting on the issues they think, on the person who they think will have an impact on those issues. And the gentleman spoke preceding me. We don't have a dictator. We don't have a kingship in the United States. Anything that's done differently, you have to have a law. And we do have opinion polls that shows that the citizens, the one that they're polling, more than 50% are for the issues that President Obama has presented. But Congress isn't responding. And it's because of these funny districts they've drawn that gives them some buffer. And we need to change that. But I think education, informing people how these things hurt them. A large number of people don't know how it hurts them until it hurts them. And it's too late. You got to start before that happens. And we all got to do it. And the middle class is critical, because if the middle class is asleep, the poor people and the working people can't do very much. But we need the middle class. We need all of us. There's many more of us. The top 3% is the one with the money. And there's another book written about the super elite. And someone mentioned some of the things it's talking about. It's about 3,000 people in the world that meet in Switzerland about 4 or 5 times a year. And they plan what's going to happen in the world. And we need to understand that. And there's another book written by a Republican, The Soul of Capitalism. And he focused on the corporate community, the investment community, and the mutual fund community. And look at all of their governing boards. The CEO appoints a board. How do you think they're going to vote? They're going to vote what the chief executive office wants. And there's no really governance. It's just symbolism. It's not reality. They vote the way the CEO wants them to vote. And then nothing changed. And they concerned about what's good for them. And there is too much fear among people. I remember when I was in the 60s, when I got out of service, my wife bought a car that she shouldn't have bought. It was a Buick, a small Buick, or a Sabre. And I was afraid to drive it looking for a job, because I'd gone to a couple of places and they fired me because I was driving this car. So that fear, I hope, is getting away from it. But we got to watch fear, because that prevents us from doing a lot of things. And we fear each other. There's so many fears that we have. And we got to get beyond that. We got to have trust. So let's get beyond peripheral issues, focus on issues, and don't turn nobody off. let's all understand that we're in this together, and what hurts one, eventually one group will eventually hurt us all. That's happening right now. Thank you.
Well, we get to hear Mr. Ray come up tonight, straight to the microphones, with words of wisdom.
Well, there'll be words, a few words. Well, what I'm concerned about more than anything else is that we are experiencing what I feel like more than any time in our country's history, the heavy hand of government. You want the economy to grow. You want people to prosper. It will not happen when you have the government sitting on somebody's shoulders. We have regulations so numerous, so confusing. This is going to hold back any kind of economic growth, and it's going to be bad for the country. We got the EPA, the OSHA. Recently, we've got the IRS that is in its own scandal. One of the most powerful organizations, not only in this country, but in the world. We've got the Department of Justice that is spying on reporters, getting their email and their phone calls. This is a heavy hand of government. It makes it hard for anybody to operate a business. It makes it hard for anybody to start a business. Who wants to get involved with something like that? People are afraid of their government. And you can write this one down. When people fear their government, this is tyranny. When the government fears the people, that is liberty. The government does not fear the people now. To me, there was an elephant in the room. I thought somebody would finally point it out, but it is, and no one has. What is it that is drawing down the economy now and causing confusion? A nightmare of more regulations. Some laws and policies are yet to be discovered. What would that be in the heavy hand of government? Well, that would be Obamacare. And if you don't think that that is hurting this country, my friends, you surely must be living in a fog. Of course it is. No one wants to do anything. It's 2,700 pages, and you can imagine there is going to be many laws per page that is going to affect people. There have been 16,000 people hired for Obamacare. Who says that government can't create jobs? They can do it. 16,000. So what are those people? Well, they're more doctors, medical people, hospital personnel, nurses. No. The 16,000, you know what they are. It's more IRS people. Do you want to know how Obamacare is going to be enforced? It will be enforced with a force of the federal government through the IRS. You better be afraid. You better think. This is an anvil around the neck of the country. Now the employer mandate has been postponed. Even one of the sponsors of Obamacare calls it a train wreck. That was Max Baucus of Montana. He called it a train wreck. He was involved. So what is good for all we were talking about tonight? Obamacare is bad for all. It is going to wreck this economy. It is especially going to ruin and hurt and damage health care in this country for years to come if it gets fully implemented and its claws get all over the country. The president said one time a heartwarming, wonderful little statement. He said, "If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon." I love what somebody said. If Obama had a city, it would look like Detroit. The fundamental problem, you see, with socialism, you know what the fundamental problem with socialism is? It's that you eventually run out of other people's money. That is my dearly beloved Margaret Thatcher. That is Detroit. And you want to know what's going to happen to this country? Everybody up here has said so far, we've got to turn this around. We've got to stop what is happening to us now. We've got to stop the downward slide of this country. We need to do something. We need to speak out. John said it too. We need to do something. And if we don't change the direction of this country, the country, my friends, will be Detroit.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Now time for Susie in front of the room. Oh, John, come on up. Didn't see you coming, sir. Sorry.
I'm sorry you didn't see me coming. That's, well,
You're
whatever.
not Susie. What's the deal?
I don't feel like Susie right now. So, anyway, a lot of what we discuss here, we're analyzing things, we're coming up with ideas from our own information, plans on how to make things better, how to correct situations. I think from both sides of the aisle, if you will, is people come up with good ideas. But the overwhelming thing which I would share here and try to very briefly is back in '96 I started interviewing people coming out of covert agencies, and they were talking about a plan to crater America. And the phrase that this one individual was using, Chip Tatum, he was saying that Bush Sr.'s plan, and this is from meetings he was in 1992, Bush Sr.'s plan was to eliminate the middle class, and that they were in the process of taking steps to do that. And he even went on to talk about just some really wild stuff, like Bush Sr.'s plan that we're going to have an incredible water shortage in this country, or of pure water anyway. Maybe we'll all get polluted with nuclear radiation or something. Gee, I guess that's happening. Anyway, they were going to actually make a channel down from St. James Bay or something like that, and cause everyone to have to purchase every drop of water. I mean, you know, it's just a horrible plan for bringing America down. And the evidence is really all around you folks, is you're getting the rug jerked out from underneath you. It's being done by design. It's being done through both parties. And I'll tell you what I'm doing about it is I'm growing mushrooms. I've got a garden. I've got my own water purification. You know, I'm putting a few things away as I can and so forth. Just so, you know, I've got solar panels. I mean, hey, a little bit of solar juice. So it's just, what am I doing? I'm trying to take care of me as best I can. So in the eventuality of even some kind of regional oops, then maybe I won't be part of the problem. And I really feel you all ought to take it to heart and do what you can yourselves, because this system is not working in your best interests. And I think you know that. Deep down, I think you all know that. And, pardon?
This system is unfixable.
Well, it actually can be fixable. That same agent, a 23-year CIA assassin, he had a comment. He said, the only thing really needful is for the American people to all just stand up and say no. Just say no. The problem with that is you gotta be awake. So anyway, in the general wake-up thing here, we've been discussing IRS and taxes a little bit in this whole discussion. At least we've been discussing economics. I have some former IRS agents, some that have done jail time, talking about how the income tax is totally fraudulent. So if you're interested, I have that. Thank you.
Wow, we've heard some interesting concepts tonight. I like the part of people waking up and getting involved and, you know, having some sort of focus on a direction, listening to one another. I think listening is key, and that's why sometimes I ask questions that maybe are a little bit leading, because I'd like to know your thoughts on a particular subject. Like Larry Summers, you know, that was on my mind today because I looked it up and had a little tiny bit of time to read, and it disturbed me to go back to the thought process of destroying any hope for banking regulation that might help the average person. Now, I've heard remarks today about the heavy hand of government and Obamacare, and I will just say that if you looked at this from a different perspective, as the gentleman on the end here said, if you don't become affected by the situation until after it's already been enacted and it's too late, then it's kind of hard to know how that will impact you. Let's look at Obamacare from the perspective of someone who has been diagnosed with cancer at some point in their past, or multiple sclerosis, or one of these diseases that would automatically give you a great big old hell no, you can no longer be insured by any insurance company. Let's look at Obamacare from the perspective of insurance companies gouging people premium-wise, and now there are so many people who are reporting that they're getting premium checks refunded to them based upon their overpayments. Let's look at, because I attended a couple of house parties, not a lot, but a couple of house parties where there were CEOs in one of the house parties, and it was just a small gathering, maybe 30 people at the most. There was a CEO of a rural county hospital who attended one of these meetings, and he basically said, if we continue to use the emergency room as our primary care, we are sunk. Something has to change. And so what we've done now is, with Obamacare, made sure that medical examinations for screenings, for well woman exam, that sort of thing, there's no copayment for them. You know, it's handled at the lower level, at the least expensive level. If you wait until someone is diagnosed with cancer or diabetes, rather than giving them helpful information throughout their life to prevent those situations, prevention, what is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Was that Benjamin Franklin? Some person said that. You know, so when I hear people rail about government, there is a role for government to play. There is a role for approvals. And I can say this after having talked to an incredibly intelligent doctor who told me about technology that's been discovered here in our own country by scientific people that has to do with helping people with mitral valve prolapse, right? It's been developed here in this country. It's under review. They're still in the clinical trials. It's been available in Germany for more than 10 years, and they do by far the greatest number of these surgeries, that instead of cracking open someone's chest to work on their heart, you go up through the leg and put in a little clip and tie those little flutters together, and ba-boom, the next day someone is able to get up and walk around. That's the kind of technology, what I was talking about with the outliers of people, the people who think outside the box. And Americans do still think outside the box. Now, there have been a number of people here talking about the fact that, you know, we're bringing everybody down, and, you know, yes, you can get into that mindset, and you can think that, you know, perhaps there's no hope for us and we're doomed if we don't all do something now. But if all you do is run in circles, scream and shout, like my old boss used to say, run in circles, scream and shout, like that's going to solve a problem. We have to have some kind of general optimism for solution, right? And not just oh, there are all these people in Switzerland who control, who meet in Switzerland who control everything that we do, and therefore, we're just going to live as serfs. No, I say forget that. I say the voices of every single one of us adding our opinions are helpful to the solutions. But you have to stop at the point of just saying, the only thing that's important is what I believe. You cannot do that. We have to have a modicum of social collaboration. And if that results in some give and take, and people adding some amendments that maybe you disagree with, but it's going to help get the overall bill passed so that we can resolve not just the quote bad special interest, because believe me, I have a banking customer who would say that, hey, repeal of banking regulations was not bad special interest. And then I have friends who, had cancer who would say that, hey, Obamacare was a great special interest to push for. We're all looking at different parts of this problem. There is not one path to the truth, in my estimation. There's like a great big black box. And I've said this before, and I apologize for repeating myself because I know that, sometimes people don't like that. But I feel like I need to say it again because there are some people here who have not heard this. If there's a great big old black box that's full of the truth, and Albert's got a peephole from this angle, and Jim's got a peephole from this angle, and Margaret can look at it from here, you're all looking at different things, kind of like the blind men experiencing the elephant for the first time, and the person who had its tail said it's very much like a rope, the person who had its legs said it's very much like a tree. We all have our perspectives that need to be shared if we're going to get to the solution, and we need to stop thinking that we are only going to be average from this point forward. I'm excited about the Mitra clip. I would like every single one of you to write your individual Congress people and the President and sign a petition to allow the FDA to approve the Mitra clip, designed, developed, started right here in this country to help people who have mitral valve prolapse. There are a lot of people out there. One of them is my dad who needs it. My time is up. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate everyone who's spoken before me. God bless.
I think I see the sound of, or the sight of Albert headed to the front. Come on up, Albert.
Let him straight, Albert. This has, I think, been one of the better meetings that we've had. I appreciate the subject very much. I appreciate the focus. I appreciate the comments, because what it tells me is that when I began coming to these meetings, I thought, why in the world am I coming to this ultra-liberal group that is just, way off in the clouds somewhere? We all have very common interest in life. We have very different perspectives. And I think if there's anything that's been coming out of this evening is that we need to take all of our personal issues, particularly the ones that we are most emotionally involved in, because as I've said before, every degree of emotion necessarily alters your perception of reality. You have to have the discipline to set the emotions aside and reason clearly through all of the issues, and the issues are huge. And to say we should not think about the 6,000 people, that is very primary importance to think about that. Not let it be the only thing, but we are under a world that is being controlled and incrementally manipulated towards a one-world government that is moving more and more towards fascism, which the large corporate structures controlling everything is, which will soon be feudalism because the middle class is disappearing. Everybody's becoming very poor. That's where the world is headed right now, and it is by design by a very greedy, avaricious for power group of people. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, you were there also, Joe. Last Monday night there was a couple who gave a presentation and John videotaped it. I think you can get a copy of the DVD from John, and I recommend that people get that DVD. This couple are Americans. They were in the oil industry. They had an enzyme technique that would dissolve heavy crude and make it light, which meant they could produce a lot more and then clean up equipment that had gotten sludged and so forth. They had like $700 million of business going in Libya. They were there on the ground when the revolution happened. And everything you have read in the newspapers is bald-faced lies. Take 180 degrees of that and you'll get closer to the truth. The only American reporters on the scene were CIA people. This couple, only through the grace of God on 3 different occasions and the spending of their last $19,000 of pocket money, were able to get out alive. It is just unbelievable. The Al-Qaeda, who was brought in by President Morsi of Egypt, supported by Obama, and by the United States government, they knew they could not get Libya to have a revolution because the people were extremely happy with Gaddafi. A couple gets married, they get $18,000 to start out with. He made a promise that no member of his family would own a private home until every one of you, the citizens, did. His father died without owning a private home. Every bit of education and medical service you need, you got from the government, even if they had to send you anywhere in the world, to any extent. No limitation whatsoever. Very happy country. The United States had put a lot of pressure on them to disarm them. And so when Al-Qaeda was moved in, since they could not foment a revolution amongst the people, they were defenseless. And believe it or not, according to these people, and we didn't see them, but they say they have images they took on their cell phones and so forth. The United States military and NATO military bombed and strafed the civilian population in Libya, killing some 500,000 people. They bombed schools, they bombed hospitals, they just tore hell out of that country. The total population was 5 million. 2 million immigrated out of there as refugees, and Al-Qaeda brought in 250,000 soldiers. And they just destroyed that country. They were defenseless. Now, why did they do that? Because Gaddafi was forming a group of African nations behind a unified currency backed by gold. That would have meant the demise of this fraudulent international banking system, including the fraudulent Federal Reserve, which is totally unconstitutional. It would have meant the demise of that, and they weren't going to let that happen. And they're the big money in the world. And they did that revolution. They manipulated our federal government. So, Jim, you asked the question of one person, if you could pass one law, what would it be? I would have the Federal Reserve abolished and all banking nationalized. That would be the first step. And then there's a whole series of things like funding government and so forth, funding politicians, term limitations, things like that. We all need to take our personal, inflammatory little issues. Now, they're big issues too. But they're little issues when it comes to issues like what happens if we're attacked militarily. All of the little issues are gone. It's pure survival, and most of us won't. That's where it is. And therefore, the hope for the future is you'd better be willing to sacrifice your life for your descendants. That's the hope for the future. I think we are so close to that. Again, I'm going to recommend for the umpteenth time, go on YouTube, watch the interview of Yuri Bezmenov when he talks about how communism takes over a country, and look how close we are to all of that. The last phase is the liberals take over because they are so well-meaning and they let the government do all of these wonderful things for people. You can't turn anything loose to government you don't want 90% of stuffed in the upper echelon's pockets. That's fact. This money that we turn over to them in socialism never really goes to the people. I hope that we can get Virginia Prodan to come here and talk. The lady, I mentioned her once before. I heard her talk at one of the meetings in town. She was in a socialist country in Romania under Ceausescu. Pardon me?
It was state capitalism.
Well, according to her words, it was socialism, and the more it got to where they took over control of the government and took over control of all of the rights of the people, those upper echelon people got wealthier and wealthier, and the people themselves got poorer and poorer, and she got banished from the country for standing up against it. And I would like for her to come here and talk about what it really means to live in America. She almost brought tears to my eyes when she stood there and said, "I am an American," and I think she's more American than many that I know here who were born here. We don't realize what we have and what we're giving away and how close we are to having lost it all. If we get all the guns taken away in this country, we are dead geese. We are dead geese, because there will be a police state so fast you couldn't even blink an eye before it happened. In South Vietnam, when they finally took over after we evacuated, they rounded up 7,000 people in one night, took them out in the field and shot them. Because those people had thought they were doing good, but they didn't realize what they were helping usher in, and they would have been the resistance. And I think we can all look in the mirror on this one. We need to put aside our small issues and look at the biggest issues we can and keep expanding our viewpoint on that, not saying, I don't believe this, it can't be a conspiracy. We've heard it mentioned tonight about what's going on. Things are planned, they're all planned, big plans. And the corporate structure is huge in this world. International corporations, transnational corporations are probably the biggest vice we have going. And it's just like Thomas Jefferson said back in the 1700s. If we ever let a private bank control our money through inflation and deflation and the corporate structure that will grow up around it, they will take all the property away from our descendants and leave them homeless in the land that we have founded for them. Thomas Jefferson, time traveler from now. He saw exactly what's happening today and went back to give that message. That's my little click on that.
All right, next up, our recent speaker. Welcome him back to the mic.
I had 2 points I wanted to bring to your attention. One was, and I heard this fairly recently, and the individual stated that the problem in our country today is that the number of people who vote for a living now outnumber the number of people who work for a living. The other thing that was a little bothersome to me the other day, when the president stereotyped all of the scandals as phony, especially the IRS, because early on he did express a legitimate concern about what happened in the IRS. But let me tell you this, folks. When 2 of the individuals that work for the IRS are testifying and take the Fifth Amendment, that ain't phony. It ain't phony.
All right, we're getting close to the end of the line. I'll pass it down.
Thanks. I'll be very brief. I don't want to go over the 5 minutes or anywhere near it actually, but and there's a can of worms I won't open tonight, but I wanted to make a point. I was precinct election official in my former place of residence in Tennessee, and yes, the votes are being stolen right and left. It's rampant, it's widespread. So I'm not telling people not to vote, but be aware of this situation, that we have to organize around that. Voting down ballot most of the time is not going to be faked at this point. It's not going to be stolen. The first and only vote thus far I've cast now that I've been back has been at the city council election, and the candidate I voted for did win, so I think my vote did count. I think people sitting out down ballot races is a huge mistake. Those are the most important ones of all, and the ones at this point that are least likely to be stolen. So that's something very important, and it is necessary for people. I understand the speaker's perspective of not fighting over the usual hot button emotion issues. I understand his point about organizing around several consensus areas, and we do need to continue that. Not just totally throw everything else to the four winds, but to really start putting an emphasis on the issues where there is an emerging consensus. So I think that was a good point. And finally, I do know of a solution, but I won't name it because if I do, I will probably be the victim of an extrajudicial execution. Thank you. I think I stayed within a time limit.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jim, you want to come on up and give your finalization? I'll save mine.
Okay.
I have a whole page full. I'm not going to do it.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to use one microphone.
Yeah, just pull it down a little bit.
Well, okay. See what I mean? Okay.
Eat one of them.
You know, we've been talking about special interests running the government. And a special interest is just, it could be a group of, a business, you know, like the Florist Association. It could be a pharmaceutical industry. It could be the iron and steel industry. Anything. They all have issues that they would like to see Washington, you know, pass laws that would give them an advantage. That's what I meant. Now, during the rebuttal, I've heard everything from heart defibrillators to ending the Federal Reserve and missions in Iraq. And I've been harping special interest versus the people. And I'm going to tell you how, I'm going to take a little bit of extra time now and tell you how special interest took over the government. Now, a few of you are old enough to remember the late 60s and early 70s. It was a different story then. Nixon, after a river in Cleveland, Ohio caught on fire, he created the EPA. People bitch about that. Well, do you want rivers on fire? I don't. He declared, I'm a Keynesian. He advocated a guaranteed annual wage. The poor people set up an encampment on the National Mall for 6 months. I mean, we had gone too far to the left. We had. I mean, they were talking about nationalizing the steel industry. That was talked about quite a bit. Went too far to the left. The business community just sat there taking hit after hit, fearing bad publicity if they responded. But they did. Here's how. An attorney wrote a letter to the Chamber of Commerce which outlined a bold plan for the business community to take over the political process in a manner the other side would not understand. It became known as a Powell Memorandum. Powell recommended hiring a staff of scholars to monitor the media and the print industry and a purge of left-wing elements. He advocated monitoring textbooks and restoring values to the educational system that promote democracy and free enterprise. He's very clever at wording his words. Now, school books are different. Now, just a few major corporations own the news media, and we don't hear about some of the things that I mentioned earlier. Mr. Powell advocated so-called public service law firms to work in the public interest, whose real mission was to promote business interest. And it started out like with tort reform, and because some laws, some suits were frivolous, some reform was needed, but it went beyond that. Now, you've seen news articles where it's just a lot harder for a person to sue a corporation. That's where it's gotten. He advocated business roundtables be set up. And the first one was set up in 1973, and I told you about that, how they used this strategy of cheap labor to bust the unions. Well, the first roundtable decided to go after the steel workers and the auto workers because they were the biggest and highest paid. Well, months later, the markets were flooded with cars and steel imports, and by the end of the 70s, the term Rust Belt was coined. You know, you had lots, 200,000 jobs lost in the steel industry alone in the 70s. High union wages was they blamed it on high union labor forcing the jobs out of the country. But what they did is amend the foreign trade policies. Now, those are some of the things Mr. Powell advocated. He delivered this letter to the Chamber of Commerce, and they set out about implementing those policies. And the Heritage Foundation is an outgrowth of it. Think tanks is an outgrowth of it. But here's what, this policy did work in a manner the other side would not understand. He delivered that letter on the 17th of August, no, the 22nd of August, 1972. On January 17th, he delivered the letter in 1971. On January 17th, 1972, Lewis J. Powell Jr. was sworn in as a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. In 1979, he wrote the opinion on a case, First Bank of Boston versus something. That law prohibited people in Massachusetts from, corporations donating to politicians. Well, that changed it. Now corporations were allowed to donate money to influence public opinion. And that's what brought about the special interests that I've talked about later on, the trade deals, the Glass-Steagall amendments, and things like that. The Obama, the public option provision was lobbied out because of special interest lobbying. Every law that's passed is touched by special interest in some shape, form, or manner. Now, that's what we're up against. Now, if you think I'm being an optimist, how much longer can we go letting other countries assume that lead in technology? Sooner or later, it's probably going to, it's possible that we'll always get along with these people, but I'm going to say the biggest manufacturing country in the world is going to do more research and development than number two, and we are number two right now. And they're graduating 10 times as many engineers as we are right now. Now that's a national security threat, folks. If and when relations sour, that's when it's going to get real interesting. There's other things that we face with too. The budget could get out of control. We could run out of energy. There's other problems that we should be looking at, but restoring the middle class will do one, it'll secure the future of this country as long as its interest is given preference over special interest. It's as simple as that. It might not be easy to do, but the answer is simple. Take the money out of politics. And another good idea would be to put every lobbyist meeting on YouTube and let it be broadcast so we know what they're talking about, but those are other ideas. That's my rebuttal. Any other questions? By the way, the information that I've shared with you tonight came out of a book I wrote. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Middle Class. You can get it for $3.95 over the internet. It will go into a lot more detail of what caused it to rise and what caused it to fall.
You say the rise of the middle class?
Rise and fall of America's middle class. I mean, it's full of graphs, charts to make my opinions, and the political parties, they're not representing the people. They're representing the people that pay for their campaigns. And you know, you say bribe, it's legal. What they're doing is legal, unless they're putting money under the table. But they're paying for elections. They get what they want. We don't. And that's pretty much it, folks.
All right. Thank you, Jim, so much for coming out tonight. Glad to have you. Glad all of you came out this evening. We'll just tell you this. I did go up and talk with the people here at the Mecca this evening when we came in about the air system. They have gotten the problem diagnosed. One of the rooftop units has failed, and the owner is getting some bids and cost information so he can decide whether to repair it, put a rebuilt one on the roof, or buy a new one and get an extended warranty if that'll be worthwhile. So hopefully here over the next week or two, we'll have that repaired and we won't cook here during the month of August. But thank you so much for being tolerant of that and for coming out and for contributing. I would just say this. I did not get up and make any comments tonight, but you know, this is a small group. We cannot change the world, but we all have a lot of friends. We're not all just alike. We cover a pretty wide band in the political spectrum, in the religious spectrum, and in the socioeconomic spectrum. We all have some words of wisdom. To me, the most important thing is to point the country in a decent direction. And just like Jim talked about the middle class, one of the things that has been so noticeable to me as a person who's lived here on the planet for 72 years now, is I've seen our country get very polarized. So many of us are either seemingly on the far left if we're speaking out, or we're over on the far right if we're speaking out. There really are a great number of us in the middle, but many of those of us who would categorize ourselves as in the middle are pretty silent. And to the extent we can come and talk here in this room on a Saturday night, we can also talk with our neighbors and our friends and our family, the people we work with if we're still doing that, the people we go to church with if we do that. There are a lot of ways we can voice our viewpoint, and it really can have an impact. But the variety of what we get to hear here is very good for all of us, I think. We enjoy it. And thank you, Jim, for bringing a good subject tonight. We really appreciate it. Let's give him one final word of thanks and we'll break it up.
This is William, your videographer from the KNO website. This is a trial video And if you like it, please let us know in the comments below, or like us or follow us, and we will find some more.